Righty. Sorry for the delay, guys. Sorry for the delay. Shabbat Shalom. I am happy to be here with you guys. You'll understand why I was a little delayed in getting here in a moment, because I came across something that I just couldn't wrap my head around. And it's going to be part of today's kind of study and whatnot. So thank you guys for joining me again. Sorry for keeping you waiting a little bit. I try to be as punctual as possible. So I do apologize. Let's just open up with a word of prayer. Yeshua, just bless this time together. I pray this teaching would just be super powerful, that you would just remove myself out of the equation and just help us to divide the word, help us to see the truths in it, and help everybody to just have good questions, ask questions, and challenge the things that I present. So we give you all the honor and glory, Yeshua. It's for you that we're doing all this, and we just thank you for the set apart day of rest. In your holy name, amen. Sweet. Again, sorry guys. I get a little wrapped up sometimes, trying to put things together at the last minute. I try to be more prepared. Brother Arthur, he knows, if Brother Arthur's watching right now, he knows, like, I've had kind of a loaded week. Like yesterday he called me and it was just like crazy. Anyways, all right, so I want to jump into Genesis 12, guys. We're starting off with Genesis 12. Or are we? Actually, I want to talk about this first before we talk about anything else today. Today's topic is so foundational. It's so crucial to understanding end times. It's so crucial to understanding who we are, like our identity in the Most High. What does it mean to be a child of God? What does it mean to be grafted into the olive tree? What does it mean to be a believer? A lot of people call themselves Christians. Like, I just call myself a believer, a follower of the way. Hang on a second while I take this off. But yeah, what does it mean to be a believer, a follower of Jesus, a follower of Yeshua? What does this all mean? And before we can dive into today, we're going to get a lot of clarity with the covenant of Abraham and Genesis 15. Before we jump into that, I just want to talk about this. Numbers 23:19. God, Elohim, the Most High, is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should repent. Has he said, and will he not do? Or has he spoken, and will he not make it good? Okay, next verse. The eternal glory of Israel, right? This is what Samuel said to Saul. Please, Samuel, and he's like, no, you can't be king anymore, because the eternal glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind. He's not human that he should change his mind. His kingdom was not going to last. The first king of Israel, Saul. Why? Because Elohim doesn't change his mind. Okay, let's look at another one. James chapter 1, verse 17. Every good and perfect gift is from above, comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is absolutely no variation or shadow of turning. This is just a repetition of what we've already been seeing in the Old Testament. And then let's look at Malachi 3:6. I am Yehovah, I change not. Therefore, ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. But he literally tells us, Malachi 3:6, I change not, right? I know, guys, it's getting really repetitive, but I just really need to make sure that we can overcome some of this deception and some of this nonsense that we've been fed for many years now. Hebrews 13, verse 8, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, is the same yesterday, today, and forever, okay? So with that understanding, right, who's with me on that? Shabbat Shalom, guys. Thank you guys for joining. Eric, Justin, I see all you guys here. Appreciate you. With all that understanding, now we can look at this, because we're going to crush this today. We're going to crush dispensationalism. And, like, if you don't know what this word means, this is all you need to know. This is just a fancy word that unfortunately defines the vast majority of people's understanding of the Bible. And this teaching right here is the primary reason why people don't even look at Genesis the way that we look at it. It's the reason why they don't even understand the Torah, Moses, like all of his writings. The reason that people don't care about the Old Testament in general, and it's just a bedtime story for their kids, it's just a bunch of nonsense, waste of time for most people. And even if they don't openly say it, they live that way. They live as if the old covenant, the covenant of Abraham, the covenant of Moses, which is just a repetition, all these concepts we're going to look at today, they just like, that's done away with. That's a different dispensation, right? They don't understand. A lot of people don't understand but this is the reason why Christians, Westerners, a lot of Bible believing churches and stuff like that, they say they believe the Bible. The reason that they walk in lawlessness, foolishness, nonsense, and completely false traditions of men is because of dispensationalism. And dispensationalism, this is all you need to know about it. Dispensationalism maintains that history is divided into different ages. And look what it says. This is all you need to know. God acts with humanity in different ways. You don't need to know anything else about dispensationalism except for the fact that it is a justification in men's minds through the imagination of their heart that says that God changes. He changes the way he interacts with humankind. A common dispensational false teaching is, oh, God required sacrifices in the Old Testament, but he no longer requires sacrifices. That's foolishness. It's not that he requires sacrifices, it's just you're giving him your agricultural products. You're giving him bread and wine. You're giving him, your firstborn male ram or whatever it is. Like, you're setting apart your first, your best, your cattle, whatever. That's money. That's real biblical money. It's just people don't understand. Oh, sacrifice is done away with. Oh, this is done away with. No. God never changes. He doesn't change. So the way that he likes to be worshipped, it doesn't change. The only thing that's been, I guess, renewed through the blood of Yeshua in the new covenant is that, oh, he is our high priest now. Okay. But he doesn't act with humanity differently. Okay. There's not all these different dispensations of time. This is from blueletterbible.org, which I like, but they've got this trash on there. This is totally false, total trash. They say that, okay, creation, can you guys see that? Creation is a different dispensation. Then you've got the dispensation of the Old Testament. Then you've got Jesus Christ, and we're in the church age. We're a church. We're a New Testament church. Israel's kind of like shoved to the side, and we're like this church now. Then, once the church age is over, then we have the millennial kingdom. And then after that, we have a perfect kingdom. This is classic dispensational trash. There should be no divisions here because he's the same yesterday and today and forever. Okay. He's the same. He doesn't change. So from creation all the way until the end of the age, which is coming up in 22 years, he's never changed. This is all human man-made trash. Absolute garbage. So with that being said, I know that seems kind of harsh, especially if, maybe you haven't hung out on this channel. You haven't been hanging out with us on Shabbats regularly, but you just have to understand that there's this trash that teaches God changes how he interacts with humankind in different periods of time. But what the scriptures teach is that he doesn't change ever, never, ever. He's not human. Okay. We need to stop humanizing God, or trying to anyway, because he can't, he's not human. Okay. With that said, let's look at Genesis 12, verse 1. Now, Yehovah had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. So let me just pause right there, set the stage a little bit. So we're looking at Parashat Lech Lecha. That means get out of your country, get out. That's what Lech Lecha means. So again, where do we leave off? We left off talking about Noah. We left off talking about the sons of Noah, which are Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then from Shem, the Shemites, that's where Abraham comes in. His father was Terah. So that's where we kind of left off. We didn't really know a whole lot about Abram, which in Hebrew is Avram. So now we start to see Avram be set apart and be sanctified and be given the promise. This is what Yehovah says. So he's going to show him a land. And then it says this in Genesis 12:2, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. Let's just pause right there, right? And again, we're just laying foundation, guys. Like, I'm not going to go through this slowly through the text today, right? I'm just laying some foundational stuff. But he said, I'm going to make you a great nation. I will bless you. I'll make your name great. So the first question you should be asking is, what does the name Avram even mean? What does that even mean? What does that even mean? If you look at it, right, Strong's H87, it means exalted father, and it also means high father. You can see it on screen, right? High father, exalted father. So when he says, I'm going to make your name great, okay, what does his name mean? You see, that's the problem we have in today's society, is that we don't think this way anymore. We don't look at people and say, oh, I wonder why your parents gave you that name, because it has an intrinsic meaning. It has a deep meaning. It could have been a trial that they were going through, your parents went through, they gave you that name. Like, we see this all the time in the Hebrew scriptures, but it's lost in our Greco-Roman society. Like, people get the certain names, they don't really mean anything, or they're not really associated with something for the most part. But the way the Hebrew is like, it's all about names. The Bible is all about names, and it's all about name changes, right? From Jacob to Israel, there's name changes from Abram to Avraham, or Avraham. there's these name changes. Names are extremely important. Names have a lot of weight. They have a lot of meaning. They have prophecy in them, right? Names are extremely important. Um, and it's something that's lost in translation, because obviously when we see later, we're going to see this later in the text, the word or the name Avraham means father of a multitude or chief of a multitude. Rather than being just a high father, exalted father, he's going to be a father of a multitude. And so he's not given the name right away, right? His name's not changed until he has Isaac, but the groundwork is being laid right here at the very beginning, that his name is going to be made great. His name is something's going to change. His name is finally going to be fulfilled, even though he's like 75 years old and childless. He's 75 years old receiving this and childless. Think about that, right? That's pretty heavy duty. See, he has Elohim showing up and telling him your name's going to be great. It's a pretty big promise, because he's childless at 75. Then it says this, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Avram departed as Jehovah had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Avram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Then Avram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran, and they departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. And then it says, Avram passed through the land to the place of Shechem as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites were in the land. Then Jehovah appeared to Avram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. And there he built an altar to Jehovah who had appeared to him. Let's just pause right there. So again, here's just to kind of contextualize it a little bit, right? Names. What's in a name? Why, how should we be viewing names properly? How do we understand names? Here's one way that I found is helpful to look at the importance of names. I want you to think of brands. I want you to think of how we view brands and brand recognition in the 21st century. Like, think of a Toyota, or think of a Honda, or think of a Hyundai versus a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, or a Maserati, right? All of a sudden, there's a shift in your brain. Oh, these are the common cars. This is a luxury cars, right? Same thing with Rolex, $23,000 watches or more versus Timex, or Apple versus knockoff, really poorly done Android stuff. Sorry if you're an Android fan. I'm just not a fan of Android, right? Apple did the smartphone the best. Apple has a market cap. Like, again, if you're not super savvy with investing and all that, Apple has a market cap of $2.6 trillion. $2.6 trillion. To give you a comparison, Amazon has 1 trillion. It's 1 trillion market cap. That's the value of the company. So Apple, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but Apple is the most recognized, respected, and valued brand in the entire world at $2.6 trillion, US petrodollars, United States petrodollars. So that's one way of looking at names, right? Think about why you have a reaction to the dollar store brands versus, other brands at maybe a mall or some luxury outlet or whatever. I don't really care about that stuff personally, but we have reactions towards names. Names have within themselves inherent meaning, importance, they carry weight. And so think about names in the Bible. When you open up the scriptures, always look at the Hebrew, always look at like, why are things named a certain way? And as you do that, you're going to see profound meanings that they're lost in translation for the most part. All right. And I know that's a very simple concept. That's a very simple, straightforward thing, but it is very profound, because as you go through the scriptures, everything just becomes way from black and white to color when you start understanding names and looking up different names and stuff like that. So again, he's 75 years old. He leaves Haran. He takes his wife, but he also takes Lot, right? His brother's son. He takes his nephew, and then he builds an altar. So, but it said, to your descendants, I'm going to give the land of Canaan. So even though the covenant isn't cut until a few years later, actually 10 years later, God doesn't cut a covenant with Abraham yet. He already is telling him, I'm going to give your descendants this land. And see, this is, man, this is like from the front of the book all the way to the back of the book. Like that's the whole, this, everything revolves around what we're reading today. Everything revolves around what we're reading today, because we were told that this is going to take place in the book of Daniel, chapter 7. It specifically says that the saints of the Most High, they're going to inherit the earth. Let me pull it up real quick. But we're specifically told that the saints of the Most High, they're going to inherit the earth forever, it says right here. Daniel 7:18. The saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. The saints of the Most High are going to possess the earth, and guess where? They're going to be dwelling in the land of Canaan. The land of Canaan, this covenant promise is going to be fulfilled very, very soon in the near future, okay? Because again, when we look at this, when we look at Abraham and who his descendants are, yes, is it talking about literal physical descendants? Absolutely. But we have to understand how spiritually this also applies, right? Paul told us very clearly that they are not all children because they are the seed of Abraham. This is Romans 9:7. But it says, in Isaac your seed shall be called. That's just his fancy way of saying it's not necessarily the children of flesh, but the ones from promise. They're by faith. And if we go down further, let me go find that verse for you real quick. Paul says in Romans 9:30, what shall we say then? That Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness of faith. So it is actually faith. It is actually faith that allows people to become descendants of Abraham, which is why the blessings of what we're reading today apply not just to literal bloodline descendants of Abraham, which are scattered all over the whole world. As you know, the prophets are very clear, but it also applies to people who call themselves Christians, people who want to follow the God of the Bible. The blessings and the curses apply to them as well, right? Are you with me on that? Because faith is what enables somebody to be a child of Abraham. Faith, okay? And so with that said, again, what we know is bad stuff's headed our way. Really bad stuff is headed our way. Why? Because right now, right down the horizon, we have Mystery Babylon that's about to be judged. Mystery Babylon is about to be judged. This is what it says in Revelation chapter 18. Babylon, the great, is fallen, has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. All the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And what the problem that most people have when they read the Bible is they don't understand how easy it is, how simple it is to just look at who Mystery Babylon is. It says right here in Revelation 18:24, in her was found the blood of the prophets and saints of all who were slain on the earth. And that's the exact same thing that Yeshua told us. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. This is Matthew 23:37. How often I wanted to gather you, your children, together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. Jerusalem, guys. Jerusalem is the current Mystery Babylon system. This is the current Mystery Babylon system. Look at Revelation 11, chapter 11, verse 8. The dead bodies of the two witnesses will lie on the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where our Lord was crucified. Yeshua was crucified on Golgotha, which is right there in Jerusalem. And when you see, so here's what your homework is right here. Go into Blue Letter Bible or whatever you want to use. The phrase great city, in the New King James it says great city. Maybe other translations say something different. But that phrase great city is used 10 times in the book of Revelation. And every single one of those 10 times it's used in the book of Revelation, it is always talking about Jerusalem. It is always talking about Jerusalem. So my point in bringing all that up is that the theme of the entire Bible, is God separating a people to himself and giving them the land of Canaan, specifically Jerusalem, to dwell in. This is like the whole theme of the entire Bible. He separates a people for himself, a people. So there's a people and a place, a holy set apart people, the saints, set apart. That's all the word saint means. Set apart, anointed, set apart people, Abraham's descendants, spiritual and physical, in the land of Israel, specifically Jerusalem, where he makes his name dwell. We're told that over and over again in all the different prophets and Moses. that he's going to make his name dwell in a certain place, and we're supposed to appear there 3 times a year, right? For the high holy days, for the first day of unleavened bread, for Pentecost, and for the first day of Sukkot. Boom. This is the whole theme of the entire scriptures. So when you look at the book of Revelation, the whole entire theme of the book of Revelation is the people of Abraham and the city Jerusalem, the great city, the great city, the great city. 10 times, guys, 10 times, and it's always talking about Jerusalem. Does that make sense? I know we're only on the 7th verse. we're only on the 7th verse, but we have to understand this, guys. We have to understand the whole theme from one cover to the other cover is a set apart people, the sons of Adam, specifically through the Abraham, and the Holy Land, set apart land, a royal land grant covenant. We'll talk about that more in a moment, okay? Then it says this, that Abraham moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east, and there he built an altar to Yehovah and called on the name of Yehovah. So Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. So we're told, okay, there's this place called Bethel. There's this place called Bethel, and then there's this place called Ai. And what we find out, I'm going to pull up First Kings, okay? What we find out about these particular places is, well, they do eventually, the seed of Abraham inherit these lands. They do. And remember, Israel is united under 3 kings: Saul, then you have David, and then you have King Solomon. Under 3 kings, there's a united nation of Israel. And then because of Solomon's witchcraft, marrying 500 women, or 900 900 women, they lead his heart astray, and he sets up all these pagan altars. The kingdom is divided. You got Rehoboam, which is Solomon's son, in the south over Judah, and then you've got Jeroboam over the north. And again, you have Jeroboam, and then let's see, I think this is, I need to look at chapter 12. I wish I had it pulled up, but let's see here. Yeah, Jeroboam, let's see. Yeah, so we have the split in the kingdom. Are you with me? We have a split in the kingdom. Hundreds of years later, the promise to Abraham has been fulfilled. The descendants of Abraham are in the land. And as soon as the kingdom is divided in 2 because of Solomon's sin, Jeroboam, this is what he does. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim and dwelt there. And he went out from there and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom may return to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices in the house of Yehovah at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will turn back to their Lord, Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and go back to Rehoboam, king of Judah. Therefore, the king asked advice, and what does he do, guys? What does he do? Made 2 golden calves and said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Egypt. And where did he set them up? And he set one up in Bethel, and the other one he put in Dan. Now this thing became sin, for the people went to worship before the one as far as Dan. He made shrines on the high places. He made priests from every class of people who were not Levites. They were not of the sons of Levi. You had to be a Levite to be a priest. And then Jeroboam, what did he do? He ordained a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month. On the 15th day of the 8th month, there was, just like the feast that was in Judah, he offered sacrifices on the altar. So he did at Bethel, sacrificing to the calves that he made. And at Bethel, he installed the priests of the high places which he had made. I'm going to talk about that more in a second. But think about the ramifications of what we're being shown here. Think about the profound magnitude and gravity that even though the Most High God, he knew that this was the outcome. This was what was going to happen under Jeroboam. He knew that Solomon was going to sin before that. He knew Saul was going to be a sinner. He knew all these people were super fallen, pagan. He knew there was going to be all these issues, but he still gave them a land grant covenant, a promise of land. He still said to your descendants, I will give this land, knowing full well the heart of the people because he knows he's omniscient. He knows everything. He knows the beginning. He knows the end from the beginning. The Most High Elohim, he understood exactly what these people were going to do when they inherited the land. And Abraham was literally pitching his tent in between Bethel and Ai. And Bethel is the place where Jeroboam decided to put some golden calves up. To me, this is so incredibly amazing. How merciful, how gracious the Most High God is, that he still blesses his people in spite of their failures. Even though he knows they're going to sin, he still, like, grace, people, like, again, the dispensational nonsense. Grace, they think a lot of people think is a New Testament concept. I see grace every time I open up these pages. How in the world can an all-knowing, all-powerful God give somebody this covenant, this promise, knowing full well that immediately they're going to start setting up shrines, pagan altars, and golden calves? It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. But as his thoughts are higher than ours, we can't comprehend his thoughts. Like the heavens are above the earth, so are his thoughts above our thoughts. We can't understand them. Why would he do this? Why would he allow this to happen? Why would he give promises to somebody whose seed would be so wicked? But it's all part of his purpose. It's all part of his divine plan, right? We don't understand all of it. We can only see the shadows and types and kind of get an essence of what's going on here. But he's merciful, he's gracious, and it's a beautiful thing, right? Now, going back to Jeroboam, notice what he did, right? Let's go back and look at it. 1 Kings 12:32. He ordained a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month. So we know, because we're students of Torah, on the 7th month, you got the first day, which is Yom Teruah. 10 days later, you got Day of Atonement. On the 15th day of the 7th month, you got the first day of Sukkot. You have Sukkot, tabernacles. So what Jeroboam did is a month later, he said, we're gonna go ahead and do this whole tabernacles, tent dwelling, Sukkot thing. But we're gonna do this at my Bethel altar with my golden calf. And it's gonna be the 15th day, not of the 1st month, but the 8th month. And again, this is a picture. Again, who was Jeroboam king over? Jeroboam was king over the north. He was the king over the 10 tribes of the north. Remember, Rehoboam, of the seed of David, over the house of Judah, the kingdom of Judah, he had 2 tribes. He had Benjamin and Levi, and well, 2.5 tribes, as people like to say, but Benjamin, Levi, and Judah. There was like 2.5 tribes in the south, but the majority, like 10 of them, were in the north. Are you with me on that? So we have Rehoboam, Jeroboam. Jeroboam's the northern king, and again, what we're seeing here in 1 Kings 12:32, it's what's going on today. Everybody wants to keep the feasts. Everybody wants to keep Passover. Everybody wants to keep Pentecost. Everybody wants to keep Yom Teruah, trumpets, tabernacles, Day of Atonement. Everybody wants to keep them a month later. This is the sin that was present all the way back in the day, many years ago, centuries ago now. It's the sin that was happening immediately when the kingdom was divided, and it's the same sin that's going on today, guys. It's a sin to celebrate the feast on the wrong time. Now, we're going to talk about this in a moment. There's unintentional sin and there's intentional rebellion, rebellious sin. There's 2 different types. There's different types of sin. But what I'm saying is that people, by and large, most Messianics, most people, they're observing the feast a month later. And we literally see this picture so early in our Bibles of this taking place. It's nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. Whether it's the Karaite Jews, most Messianics, or the Hillel calendar people or the Enoch calendar people, most of them keep the feasts always a month later than the true timing in the land of Israel, according to Aviv barley and the sighting of a sliver moon. It's just the way it's always been this way. So just keep that in mind as we keep moving through the material here. The beauty of the text. Okay, so he said, I'm going to give you this land, and Bethel literally comes up as one of the names of the places, right? So this is what happens next. Genesis 12:10. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to dwell there, for the famine was severe in the land. And it came to pass, when he was close to entering Egypt, that he said to Sarai his wife, indeed, I know that you're a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore it will happen when the Egyptians see you, that they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please say you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you. So it was, when Abram came into Egypt, that the Egyptians saw the woman, that she was very beautiful. And the princes of Pharaoh saw her, and commended her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. So we pause right there. I like what the Tree of Life version says. The princes of Pharaoh also saw her and raved about her to Pharaoh. They raved, man. They had their cup in their hands, whispering each other's ears, pointing or whatever, and just like grown men acting like fools, raving about this woman to Pharaoh. So what we know is that indeed she was beautiful. Sarai, which is later Sarah, she was beautiful. And these guys are raving about her. So what did they do? Apparently this was common practice in the culture. They just take her. The woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And this is what happens next. He treated Abram well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys and camels. But Yehovah plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called to Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister? I might have taken her. I might have taken her as my wife. Now therefore, here's your wife. Take her and go your way." So Pharaoh commanded his men concerning Abram, him, and they sent him away with his wife and all he had. Guys, there's so many important principles here. I cannot begin to stress to you how many important principles are right here within this text. I'm wondering if we have any comments or any questions first before I go on. Yeah, okay, I don't see anything. So Strong's 5060 Naga. Let's see. Yeah, to reach, to strike. Again, there was great plagues. What does it mean that there was great plagues? Lay the hand upon. Interestingly, strike, touch. So again, this is the word that's used here to describe plagued, with great plagues. Okay, great plagues. Let's look up this word real quick. But guys, this is a picture. Okay, what we're seeing here is a picture of what sin does. Okay, stroke, disease, marks, plague, wounds, wounded. Okay, what we're seeing here in these verses is a picture of sin. Did Pharaoh know? Did he know that that he was almost committing adultery? I mean, he already lusted after her in his heart, so he already committed adultery in his heart. It says that he might have taken her. This is Genesis 12:19. He might have taken her as his wife. So it leads me to believe that he did not have intercourse or relations with Sarai. I don't think so. Some people teach that. I don't think that's the case. I don't think it happened. The plagues happened to prevent that. But the Yehovah plagued Pharaoh. But he didn't know. He didn't know that this was another man's wife. He just took her. This was a custom, apparently a custom of the land. Hey, I like that. I want it. Bring it over in my house. That's mine now. You know what I mean? It seems like a very almost chauvinist society. It seems very, treating women like merchandise almost. It's kind of it's very different from Hebrew culture, because Hebrew culture really respects and elevates women, as we're going to read with Hagar. That the angel of Yehovah appears to her and he elevates her and blesses her and provides for her. Women are always elevated, but we see Pharaoh just taking whatever is right in his own eyes, like, okay, you're coming into my house. You know what I mean? So this is an example of unintentional sin. Did Pharaoh mean to sin? Well, I mean, if she's a single woman and he wanted to have her, technically there's nothing wrong with that, right? Now we can talk about, okay, is he providing for her? Well, he's Pharaoh, so probably. Is he treating her well, respectfully, providing, food, clothing, marriage rights? Okay. There's certain things that go along with marriage in the Torah, but the point is he wouldn't have done anything wrong, except for it was an unintentional sin because of somebody else's wife. And even though this is the key, all right? Pay attention to this right here, because this is the key. Even though he didn't know that he was committing adultery or about to commit adultery, he was still plagued. He was still plagued with great plagues. Great plagues. Not just small plagues. Like, a lot of bad stuff happened. And it wasn't just him. It wasn't just Pharaoh. It was his entire house. Pharaoh and his house. Guys, this is a picture of sin in our lives that we're not aware of. This is a picture of unintentional sin. When we are sinning and we don't know, there are still consequences for that, right? Let me give you an easy example. When I help people with deliverance being a fancy word for salvation, right? Delivering from demons, from oppression, from demonic strongholds in people's lives. When I help people with deliverance, I help them pray through the process of deliverance. One thing that usually like to say is you got to get rid of household idols. You got to get rid of things that maybe you got from Africa. My wife had to do that. She had some stuff from when she visited Africa, and there were these little like images of things. Um, you have to get rid of things that have evil attached to them. Obviously, books of witchcraft. Obviously, books of or tarot cards or Ouija boards. Obviously, those things should be burned with fire. But you have to get rid of idols. You have to get rid of things that have evil attached to them. That's one thing. Like, that's a small example of deliverance and doing deliverance properly. Because, guys, the reason that a lot of people are sick, the reason that a lot of people, um, the reason a lot of people have illness, diseases, they're being plagued with plagues, migraines, different types of issues in the body, uh, different types of I'm not talking about, okay, oops, I cut my hand cutting onions with on the cutting board. I accidentally cut my finger. I'm not talking about whoopsies and maybe something an accident that happened in a day necessarily. I'm talking about, oh yeah, I've had migraine headaches for 15 years. Oh, I've had IBS for like 20 years, or oh, I've had this condition or this condition for such a long time. What I'm going to suggest to you today, what I'm going to submit to you, is that there's something that you have not dealt with. There is great plagues upon you in your house because you have not dealt with the evil properly in your household. Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness, right? We have to take care of the evil inside of our homes because even unintentional sin has consequences. Unintentional sin has consequences. Let me give you an example from the New Testament. 1 Corinthians 11:27. Whoever eats this bread or drinks this cup of the Lord, of Yeshua, in an unworthy manner will be guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord. Okay? For this is what it says just a few verses down. For this reason, many are weak and sick among you, and many sleep. That means they passed away. For if we would judge ourselves, we would not be judged. So Paul is talking about communion. He's talking about taking the cup of communion in a worthy manner, right? But this again, it applies in so many different ways. Sin can cause plagues to fall upon God's people because if you have no knowledge of something, there's consequences. God's going to let you know. And a lot of times he allows these consequences to take place so that you can deal with it. You can deal with it properly in your life. That's why bad things happen. That's why crazy things happen sometimes. I can give you lots of personal testimonies for myself. But yeah, this is the picture of unintentional sin. And it again, I encourage you to examine your heart. What kinds of things have you allowed into your life? What kinds of, pagan things? Like, let me give you a clear one, right? If you're not taking the Sabbath day off, Friday night to Saturday night, most Christians are in this camp. You're gonna have problems. You're gonna have problems. I remember one time I was on my way back home. It was late at night. This was a while ago, and a deer literally ran into my car because it had been known to me you need to not be driving around past sundown on Shabbat, like Friday night. And that's something that I struggle with. I struggle with because I have a lot going on during the day and I try to get it all wrapped up by Friday. But this particular time I was dropping somebody off at their house, and he was one of my workers, and the sun set like on the car ride, and it was made known to me, you should have dealt with that sooner. You should have dropped them off sooner. And a deer literally hit my car, and there's a dent there. And to this day, when I open the door, it squeaks. It's a constant reminder that that was I guess an unintentional but slightly intentional sin. I don't know. It's kind of in that gray area, but bad things happen. Not observing Shabbat, you're gonna have plagues in your house. Like anything that's sin. Again, what's sin? Sin is anything that's disobedience to a direct or spoken command of the Most High God. That's sin. If we disobey anything that he says to do, you're going to have great plagues. So I know, hopefully that helps you in your walk, helps you deal with the unintentional sin, helps you deal with the sin in your life. And, talking about like, let's just talk about deliverance. Okay. Let's talk about demonic possession just for a second. Cause this is a lot of people don't talk about this stuff. So I like to talk about it a lot on this channel. Because a lot of people just don't even talk about it. Like most people are like, oh, that doesn't exist. The reason that people don't experience complete deliverance a lot of times, like I was on the phone with somebody recently, and I know they should have been delivered more from other demons and issues, strongholds in their life. I know they should have been delivered, but the reason that they were not is because they have not fully submitted themselves to God. They just haven't. They just have not, okay? This is very common. The reason why people don't experience complete deliverance is because they have too much unintentional sin in their lives, and they're not willing to learn the Torah to understand what all the sins are. Like, we're not supposed to be eating pork. We're not supposed to be eating shellfish. We're not supposed to be eating the unclean thing. There's going to be plagues on the house because of that, right? And that's why a lot of people don't experience deliverance the way that it's meant to be experienced. The reason a lot of people, maybe there's some demons cast out, and then, you talk to them like a month or two later, and it's like, what happened to you? Like, you're back where you used to be. It's because, yeah, even though Yeshua, his name is so powerful, and it allows us to experience freedom from all chains of darkness, demonic oppression, even though that's true, we have to actually not continue sinning. Like, how many times does Yeshua in the New Testament say, okay, I made you well, I've made you whole, now go and sin no more, lest the worst thing happen to you. Now go and sin no more. Now go and sin no more. How many times does he say that? He says that quite a bit. The problem is that people don't understand what sin is because they believe dispensational theology that teaches that God changes his mind about what sin is, but he never changed his mind about sin. Sin is breaking the Torah. Anything that's written in the Torah, that's sin, right? Okay, does that make sense? I'm going to check comments in a moment, okay? Again, this is how we win this war. This is how we win this war, okay? This is James chapter 4, verse 7. Submit to God, resist the devil, he will flee from you. This is a promise, this is a guarantee, all right? This is a promise, this is a guarantee. All righty. Plagues. Yeah, 100%, Arthur. I agree with you on that. AIDS. I can actually show you. I have articles and all kinds of stuff to show that AIDS is linked to, lifestyles. Yeah, let's just put it that way. I think you know where I'm going with that, but I don't want to get censored on YouTube for like hate speech against the alphabet soup of sexual orientations. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, Keith. I struggle with the 7th day Shabbat. Thanks for learning so much. I appreciate you. Yeah. I have literally, again, our Father is very loving, but he also uses the rod, and I've been beaten with the rod a little bit. Like your dad's belt growing up. I've been spanked a little bit when I've gotten out of line, and I love that because, yeah. Anyways, I've been spanked many times because I haven't observed Shabbat the way that he wants me to observe it, and so I'm still learning, guys. I'm with you on this. All right, I'm still learning how to live this walk and live this life in a way that pleases our Father. That's really what it's all about, guys. It's really what it's all about. And so we need to start to address the unintentional sin in our lives. All right. So hopefully that kind of sheds some light on a lot of things. That was a lot of different topics there just in the first chapter. Let's take a look at what happens in Genesis 13, guys. What happens in Genesis 13? All right, let's take a look. It says Abram went up from Egypt, Mitzrayim, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him to the south. Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and gold, and he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel to the place where his tent had been at the beginning between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abram called on the name of Yehovah. There he called on the name of Yehovah. Again, we see this importance of names throughout the Torah, throughout the scriptures. Names, so important that he knew the name of Yehovah. He knew the name of Yehovah. But what's interesting to me, think about this for a second. Okay, I wasn't going to bring this up, but let's just bring it up real quick. All right, real quick. When we get to Exodus 3, it says Moses was tending the flock of Yitro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock back to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of Elohim. And then the angel of Yehovah appeared to Moses in a flame of a fire from the midst of the bush. So Moses, looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. And then this is what it says, right? This is what it says. Let's just go back. Okay, he says, remove your sandals. Take your sandals off your feet. For the place where you stand is holy ground. Exodus 3:5. And this is what it says. Exodus 3:6. He said, I am the Elohim of your father, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Yitzchak, the Elohim of Yaakov. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look on God. And Yehovah said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. So I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from the land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come now, therefore, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Now, here's the first objection. Ready? Here's the first objection. Moses felt unworthy. He felt unworthy. Moshe said to Elohim, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Then he, Jehovah, said, I will certainly be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought this people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Okay. So the first objection was, I feel unworthy. Me? I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. That's interesting. Now look at the second thing. Moses said to Elohim, indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the Elohim of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? Wait a minute. What happened, guys? What happened? I thought that he called upon the name of Yehovah. How come it became forgotten? How did his name become forgotten in a few hundred years? What happened? Elohim's name became forgotten? Listen to this. It's just like what has taken place in the last days, that people have forgotten the name of Yehovah. And it's not that they've forgotten the name of Yehovah. It's not, oh, should I say Yahweh, or should I say Yahusha, or should I say Yehovah? It's not the pronunciation of the lips that we've forgotten. But you know what we've forgotten? We've forgotten the authority of names and the importance of names. That's why I spent a little bit of time at the beginning talking about names and the importance of names. Because Moses said, I'm not worthy. That was his first objection. Who am I? But then he said, what is the name? What is the name that I should use when the children of Israel ask me, what's the name that I should use? Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, well, what do I do if Pharaoh doesn't believe me? What do I do if this or that or this or that or this or that? He didn't talk about anything else. He said, I don't feel worthy. Okay, you're going to give me a sign. Okay, what's the name? On whose authority should I speak? What is the name? What is the authority to whom I'm going to speak, and or to how I'm going to deliver the message? What's the authority? And see, that's what we've forgotten, guys. We've forgotten the authority of the beautiful, matchless, mighty name of Yeshua. We have forgotten the authority of the name. It's the authority. And let me shed some light on this, right? Because Abraham called on his name, but by the time Moses comes around, he's like, I don't know who you are. What's the name? I forgot. Okay, I'm not worthy. I'll go ahead and be used. And again, think about how you would react, right? I probably would have said, what if Pharaoh doesn't believe me? That wasn't Moses. Moses understood something that you and I don't understand. He understood authority that comes with names. And Elohim, this is what Exodus 3:14 says. Elohim said to Moses, I am who I am. He said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. I am. I am who I am. I am who I am, guys. This is what it said. It says, Eye, Aser, Eye. Aye, Eser, Aye. Okay? I am who I am. The thing about the word I am, those two words in English, I am, is that, yes, it means to be present. I am, and as soon as you say it, all of a sudden, it's now in the past. That no longer is here with us. It's like you have to think about time, space. You have to think about this three-dimensionally. I am. Yes, the present is when the word I am is said, it's in the present, but then the present becomes the past. But I am is now, and it always will be into the future. I am is ever present. It always is. That's why we say He always was, he always is, and he always will be. I am is a authority statement of always being and always will be. It's a statement that he's omniscient, he's omnipresent, he's absolutely all powerful. That's the authority of the name. And it's not, again, it's not about how we pronounce it, right? A lot of people get tripped up on this. Well, Yahweh, Jehovah, Yahusha, Yahuwah. A lot of people get tripped up on how you pronounce the name. But it's more important that you understand the authority of the name. And the authority is that he is the ever-present one. He always was, he always is, and he always will be. Haya, Hove, Yehiyeh. That's why I say Yehovah. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. That's why I do use the name Yehovah. It's not a big deal. You can use whatever name is comfortable for you as far as the pronunciation. But it's interesting that Abram, did call upon the name of Yehovah, but it was forgotten by the time Moses came around. He didn't know. Very interesting concept. Lot also, who went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents. So this is back to Genesis 3:5. Now the land was not able to support them, that they might dwell together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together, and there was strife between the herdsmen of Avram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. The Canaanites and the Perizzites then dwell in the land. So Avram said to Lot, please, let there be no strife between you and me, between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before you? Please, separate from me. If you take the left, I will go to the right, or if you take the right, I'll go to the left. And Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before Jehovah destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of Jehovah, like the land of Egypt as you go towards Zoar. Then Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. Avram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against Jehovah. And Jehovah said to Avram, after Lot had separated from him, lift your eyes now, and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land which you see, I will give to you and your descendants forever. And I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants could also be numbered. Arise, walk in the land through its length and width, for I give it to you. Then Avram moved his tent, and he went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to Jehovah. So again, we see the repetition of the covenant. We see another repetition of it. If you can count the dust, that's how your descendants are going to be, Avram. All right? All right. Cool. Let's keep rolling here. I don't have, there's things I could say about Genesis 13, but I think it's all pretty straightforward. I really want to get to 15. It's really powerful stuff. But Genesis 15 is where we're going to spend a lot of time, all right? Genesis 14:1, and it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. And these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Kedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Kedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and attacked the Rephaim. Sorry, I just realized I didn't switch tab. They attacked the Rephaim and Ashtaroth, Karnaim, the Zuzim and Ham, and the Emim in Shaveh Kiriathaim, and the Horites in the mountain of Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and attacked all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. So we're Genesis 14:7. I'll say this really quickly. You might be looking at this and you're like, oh, well, what's the importance here? Why are we giving so many details? The Rephaim, there's descendants of the giants of the Nephilim within the Rephaim. There's descendants of the Nephilim in the Emim as well, and then also in the Zamzumim. There's also descendants of the Nephilim. We've been talking a lot about the Nephilim. All these camps, they have seed of Satan or seed of the serpent in them, genetic offspring from the Nephilim. So that you'll find that concept throughout the scriptures. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I just wanted to mention that. And so let's look at Genesis 14:8. And the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out and joined together in battle in the valley of Siddim against Kedor Laomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of nations, Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of asphalt pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some fell there, and the remainder fled into the mountains. They took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way. They also took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Aned, and they were allies with Abram. Now, when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, it's funny that it says his brother, because he considers him his brother, even though he's his nephew, was taken captive. He armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus, modern day Syria, actually. So he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley, after his return from the defeat of Kedorlaomer, and the kings who were with him. So the big thing to take away here, guys, is that Avram was, he was a really powerful guy. You know, he's CEO of a company with 300 men, trained men in his own house. He armed them. They were his own military force. You know, he had 300 men. You know, we think of the movie like 300 with the Spartans and King Leonidas and, you know, Greece and the Spartans and all that. Avram was the original 300 movie. I mean, 318 men able to take out kings. Obviously, he had Elohim's blessing. Obviously, he was protected in battle. But, you know, as far as like Avram and just, you know, thinking back on the heritage of the Hebrews and our ancestry, whether we're literal physical descendants of Abraham or we're grafted in, this is the heritage of Elohim's servants, that their enemies are given into their hand. And I think it's a really cool story of war, and conquest and victory. It's a really beautiful thing. I love this story. Yeah. So, before we go on, let me see if there's any questions really quick. Sanhedrin. Okay. So, Diane says, is Mystery Babylon a state of being or an actual location? I've been taught both. So again, I just want to rephrase this because it's in my book. When you look up the word great city, the 2 words, great city, and don't look for it just in the book of Revelation, right? In the book of Revelation, the every time you see the words great city used, it's always talking about Jerusalem. Always. It's never talking about anywhere else. It's not talking about the Vatican. It's not talking about Rome. It's not talking about Washington, D.C. It's not talking about the city of London. Mystery Babylon, it's always talking about Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the theme of the book of Revelation. The judgment of Jerusalem, the restoration of Jerusalem, and then the new Jerusalem coming out of heaven. That's the whole theme, along with Daniel's people, the 12 tribes of Israel. The judgment of the 12 tribes, the restoration of the 12 tribes in the land, Gog and Magog being destroyed, and then the forever and ever reign of the 12 tribes. And obviously the New Jerusalem has 12 gates representing the 12 tribes of Israel. So that's the theme of the book of Revelation. So is Mystery Babylon a state of being? We can spiritualize Mystery Babylon to be things, and Mystery Babylon has daughters, you know, like obviously New York City and all that. But the main, like the interpretation is that Mystery Babylon is the place where our Lord was crucified. Hopefully that makes sense. There's no other place where he was crucified. So hopefully that helps. All right. So let's take a look at Abraham and Melchizedek. All right. This is a very, people get really twisted doctrines and strange things from just these few verses. It's really weird. So we're going to look at this again. You guys know my 3 laws of interpretation. You guys know that I hold myself to extremely high standard whenever I look at anything in the Word of God. So what's going on here with Melchizedek? I think you're going to be really stunned, really surprised when you see what actually is going on here. Genesis 14:18. So after this war, right? After this war, Abraham is victorious. It says in verse 18, then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of the Most High God, or God Most High, El Elyon. And he, Melchizedek, blessed him, Abraham, and said, okay, so he blessed him. Melchizedek brought the bread and the wine. He was bringing the goodies, right? Melchizedek was. Keep that in mind. This is very important. He blessed Abraham and said, blessed be Abram, Avram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. Blessed be El Elyon, who has delivered your enemies into your hand, and he gave him a tithe of all. Let's pause there. We have 3 verses here, 3 verses, and people create all kinds of doctrines. When I used to go to mainstream Christian churches, whether it was Calvary Chapel, Acts 29 churches, or different Reformed Baptist churches, fundamental independent Baptist churches, Calvinist churches, whatever you want to call them. I've been to many churches. They will always take this and say, you got to tithe. Tithing is biblical. You got to give 10% of your money, whatever you earn, your income. You got to give 10% to somebody because it's a concept we always see in the Bible. Genesis 14, Melchizedek, Abraham gave Melchizedek 10% of his stuff. So it's funny, right? It's ironic, it's hypocritical, and it's stupid that Christians say that the Torah, God's instructions, are done away with. They're a yoke of bondage. They're nailed to the cross. They no longer are relevant to my life. Oh, except for the 10 commandments, except for the 4th one, because I don't want to keep the Sabbath day holy. I forget about the 4th, but, have no other gods, don't murder, don't covet, don't commit adultery. Okay, those are good. But let's forget about the Sabbath day. But then they hypocritically, arrogantly, foolishly say, oh, you got to tithe, though. You got to give money to an organization, whether it's a church, a 501c3 church, a politically correct 501c3 organization. You got to give your money somewhere because of this right here, and because I'm going to cherry pick all these little verses from the Old Testament to fit my agenda to make money and use the Word of God to enrich myself, right? That's what these pastors, that's what all these fake churches do. That's what they do to people. They use the Word of God to enrich themselves. It's sick. It's a joke. It's perverted and twisted. Because as I explained to you what this is saying, let's just rewind. What did I say? Melchizedek, king of Salem. By the way, it's Jerusalem. Melchizedek was a high priest. He was a high priest in Jerusalem. I'm going to talk about that more in a second. Melchizedek brought bread and wine. Melchizedek blessed Abraham. And Melchizedek, gave Abram a tithe of all. Melchizedek gave Abraham the tithe. Abraham didn't bring bread and wine to Jerusalem for Melchizedek. It was the other way around. Melchizedek gave Abraham 10% of goodies. We're not told exactly what. All we know is that there was some bread and wine. Some bread and wine was present. Melchizedek wasn't the recipient of the tithe. Abram was. Avram was the recipient of the tithe. But everybody wants to twist these verses to fit their agenda that you need to give to a 501c3 church organization, some kind of a church. And it's just foolishness, guys. It's just foolishness, okay? Okay. It's foolishness. I'm looking at the comments. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys. I'm glad that resonates with you because I'm just sick and tired of people using the Word of God for their own twisted, perverted advantage. Now let's talk about Melchizedek. Real quick, is tithing bad? No, tithing's a biblical concept. We should tithe. Just, it's supposed to be for the widow, the poor, the orphan, and yes, the Levite, but nobody's really a Levite anymore. I can't, like me, I teach on Shabbats. Do I fulfill the role of a Levite? Sure. Yeah, maybe. And we're all kings and priests, though, right? So, like, I can make that definition really broad. We're all kings and priests. We all get baptized into the priesthood of the Most High God. That's the whole point of baptism. We get inaugurated. It's an inaugural mikvah or a baptism as priests. We're all priests. So to say that, I'm a priest versus somebody else, I don't like to do that, because we're all supposed to be priests and kings, and we're all supposed to be doing the Great Commission, right? However, yeah, if you want to partner with me, that's cool. Because I'm doing a lot. I'm trying to do my book, which will be released soon. I'm putting together a discipleship program. There's things that I'm doing, and I can make that available, right, through whatever donations, whatever you want to call them. But technically, it's supposed to be for the poor, the widow, the orphan, and yes, the Levite. But again, we're all kings and priests, so I would prioritize the widow, the poor, the orphan, along with, if you feel like there's a ministry or whatever that's doing good work. I particularly like, there's a few ministries that I like. Becca Bitterman's a really good one. There's a lot of ministries that are doing good work out there. Hey, support them. But I've heard people in this movement say, "Oh, I'm a Levite," and it's just, it comes across as lording over people. It comes across kind of arrogantly to me. I don't like it, so I don't say that. So this is so Salem. It says that Melchizedek was king of Salem. Going back to what we're talking about, king of Salem. So Abraham met him. He brought out bread and wine. He blessed Abram, and then he gave Abram a tenth, right? Now we're not, and that's what tithe means, by the way. Tithe means 10%. It just means a tenth part. Now, this is from my book. We aren't told much about Melchizedek. So there you can look at Psalm 110, and you can also look at Hebrews 5 through 7, chapters 5 through 7. It talks about Melchizedek in those places. So what we do know is that Melchizedek was operating as a priest in Jerusalem long before the Israelites even entered the land under Joshua. That was years and years later. So we should conclude that Jerusalem always has been the set apart central location of proper worship towards Yehovah. Okay? And that's why Daniel, in the 70 weeks of Daniel prophecy, was told to restore and build Jerusalem. There's this time period determined for the restoration and rebuilding of Jerusalem as the proper place of worship. It's talking about, Jerusalem has always been the central place of worship for God's people. It's always been the place where his name was meant to be exalted from. It's the place that it literally says in Chronicles that his eyes are always on it, and his eyes never depart from the land of Israel, specifically also Jerusalem. It's just his city. It's his city, guys. It's his city. So let's go back then, okay? Now that we understand Melchizedek a little bit better, he was just a priest, okay? He was a priest in Jerusalem. He blessed Abram. He didn't just bless him with his lips. He blessed him with 10%. And then it says this in Genesis 14:21. Now the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the persons and take the goods for yourself." So the king of Sodom was like, "Hey, have some goodies." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have raised my hand to Yehovah, God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth. I will take nothing from a thread to a sandal strap, that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich, except only what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, that let them take their portion." So basically, he doesn't want anybody to take the glory or the credit for his victory, or his not necessarily his victory, but Avram didn't want anybody to take the glory away from the Most High God, because again, it is the Most High God who gives our enemies over to us in battle. And Avram did not want to take somebody else to take the glory and say, "Oh yeah, Avram got rich because the king of Sodom blessed him." But so he said no. So I guess the application for you and I is to be very wise with who we accept favors and gifts and blessings from, because it might be used to manipulate us. It might be used against us. People do that. And especially is true with cults. It's especially like, for example, the Mormon church. They'll send their missionaries to do work for you and manipulate you into joining their organization. Like, there's a lot of manipulation, weird stuff that goes on around, You guys know this. You're aware of it. So we have to be careful who we allow in our lives, who we allow to bless us, who we allow to, give us provisions and things like that. Okay, there's a warning there. Abraham's life gives us a warning. So now we're ready to jump into Genesis 15. I've been really itching to dive into this. I have a few things. It's not going to be super long and drawn out, but I have a few things to talk about when it comes to Genesis 15. Okay, and before I do, because I like to usually when I go to the next chapter or whatever, I like to see what's going on in the comments. Yes, 100%. Tithing is also to honor the feast days. So you set aside tithing for yourself to actually go to Jerusalem to present yourself 3 times a year. That's part of your tithing. So yeah, that absolutely, man, 100%. Yeah, that I love that. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. So okay, Genesis 15. Genesis 15. Oh, sorry. I clicked on the wrong button. After these things, the word of Yehovah came to Abram in the vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Avram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." But Avram said, "Adonai Elohim, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus?" Keep that name in mind, by the way, Eliezer of Damascus. That was his highest trained servant. We're going to read about him more when Avram gets a wife for his son, Isaac. We're going to read about Eliezer of Damascus and how he gives him a covenant. He puts his hand underneath Avram's thigh, and there's a covenant that's made, and he's supposed to go get a bride, a wife for Isaac. So this is what it says. So Eliezer of Damascus, his highest servant, is the heir. Genesis 15:3. Then Avram said, "Look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir. And behold, the word of Yehovah came to him, saying, This one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir." Then he brought him outside and said, "Look now toward heaven and count the stars if you're able to number them." And he said to him, "So shall your descendants be." And Avram believed in Yehovah, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. Okay. Very important concept here. It is faith. It is belief. It is with the heart that we believe. And then that's accounted to us for righteousness, right? We have to believe. Is it through works? Is it through performance? Yes. Is obedience important? Obviously, it's important. Obviously, we take the Sabbath day off. Obviously, we do the things that are pleasing in the eyes of God. But we have to do it in faith, right? We have to do it in faith, not the works of the law to gain God's favor and stuff like that. We believe in Yeshua. We believe in his finished work on the cross. We believe in the renewed covenant in his blood. We believe, and that's what's accounted to us for righteousness also. Just that's what it means to be a descendant of Abraham, right? Just like we read about in Romans 9 and Romans 11. Then it says this in Genesis 15:7. Then he said to him, "I am Yehovah, who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit it." And he said, "Adonai Elohim, how shall I know that I will inherit it?" So he said to him, "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old ram, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." He brought all these to him. He cut them in two down the middle and placed each piece opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds in two. And when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Avram drove them away. Okay. Before we read any further, I want to direct your attention now to today's thumbnail, right? It's the same thing. I know I tried. There's a dead cow here. There's a vulture right here. And like the fire of the torch is keeping the vultures away. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed that little thumbnail. But so that's a picture of what happened here, because they're cutting a covenant. The pieces, the animals were cut down the middle, right? And each piece was placed opposite the other. The birds were left intact, and this is what we're shown next. The sun was going down, and a deep sleep fell upon Avram, and behold, a horror and great darkness fell upon him. And he said to Avram, "Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that's not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. Also, the nation of whom they serve I will judge. Afterward, they shall come up with great possessions." Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried at a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. And it came to pass when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces. On the same day, Jehovah made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadmonites, the Hittites, Perizzites, and the Raphaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. And that concludes Genesis 15. What we need to understand here, guys, again, remember I talked about this. There was a particular episode, a live that we did together. It was called Mystery of Covenants, Mystery of Lawlessness. And remember, the Bible is a book of covenants. The entire Bible is a book of covenants. Specifically, there are three types of covenants. I've talked about this. We have the suzerain vassal covenant, we have a royal land grant covenant, and then we have a royal messenger covenant, which is the Great Commission. We see these three covenants, right? Suzerain vassal, royal land grant, and royal messenger. We see these three covenants over and over and over again throughout the scriptures. The one that was instituted here was the suzerain vassal covenant. Suzerain vassal. This is just a title that we've given to this Old Testament, this concept that this is the way that kings did business from antiquity. This is the way that ancient cultures did business with each other. A suzerain vassal. When you have a covenant between a stronger king and a lesser king, that's what's called the suzerain, the superior king, and the vassal king, lesser king covenant. Again, this is from ancienthebrew.org. Let's just go and jump over to that website, ancienthebrew.org. Okay. So this is where I'll start reading right here. Okay. From ancienthebrew.org. This is the suzerain vassal covenant. Okay. Typically the most widely used ritual, basically the ritual of the covenant was what? Cutting bodies of animals in halves, placing them in two rows with enough space between for the two parties of the treaty to walk side by side, as they did with the Abrahamic covenant. Okay? This wasn't seen until after the fall of Adam and death, separation was brought into the world. As they walked between the pieces, they were vowing to each other, may what has happened to these animals happen to me if I break this covenant with you. Let me say that one more time. This is the key of prophecy. This is the key of everything that's about to happen in the next few years to United States, Europe, UK, Australia, Israel. This is the reason why bad things are happening, why evil, tribulation, and the time of Jacob's trouble is about to happen on all descendants of Abraham that are rebellious, transgressing, or sinning unintentionally against the covenant of the Most High. This is it right here. May what has happened to these animals happen to me if I break this covenant with you. Again, this is the essence of the suzerain vassal covenant that we see in Genesis 15. The torch passed between the pieces. The reason that Abraham had a deep sleep fall on him is because no man can see God and live, right? No man can see him and live. A deep sleep fell upon him, and the torch passed between the pieces. A torch passed between the pieces. They couldn't walk side by side like a normal suzerain vassal covenant requires, where you walk in between the row of the pieces. The two rows, you walk in between side by side. Instead, Abraham went to sleep and the torch passed. Okay? The torch passed. No one can see God and live. He walked among the pieces to confirm the covenant that if the descendants of Abraham, both the spiritual and physical descendants of Abraham, break the covenant that Elohim makes with them, that Moses, all Moses does is just show up and give more clarity to the covenant that had already been made. It's the same covenant. There's no different covenant. Moses shows up later, and there's the marriage ceremony on Mount Sinai, and the whole entire law is given to the people of Abraham. If anybody breaks that law, if anybody breaks that Torah that we're even reading right now from Moses, if you break this Torah and you choose to walk in rebellion, antagonistically, stiffening the neck, not wanting to do the Torah, what happened to the animals is going to happen to you as well. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Now let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. So this is the secret of end times prophecy, guys. This has everything to do with end times prophecy. Okay. It says this: know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will serve the strangers, and they will afflict them for 400 years. Strangers will afflict them for 400 years. Most people falsely interpret this verse to be talking about Egypt and the Egyptians, but I've already shown you in my podcast that we have to look at what Paul said. We have to look at what is being said here. And the mistreatment of Isaac actually began with Ishmael right here when he's 10 years old. And we're gonna read a little bit about that, okay? But the mistreatment happened here. We have, again, those 400 years to the Exodus, and then that gives us the date for the Exodus, okay? We know, again, if you haven't checked out episodes 2 through 7 of the podcast, Overcome Babylon, this is going to be way over your head, but I don't have time to explain all of it, right? But the covenant was made with Abraham when he was 80 years old. This Genesis 15 covenant was made with him when he was 80 years old, right there. And then 430 years later came the law after when the Exodus took place, okay? So very important numbers. We're given very important information here from Genesis 15, because once we have the date of the Exodus, then we have 2 years until traveling to the promised land begins. We have the 40 years of punishment. Then we have the year from creation, 2500, from the creation of Adam, 2500 years until Joshua 5:10 takes place. The year before Joshua 5:10 is the year 2499. You divide that by 49 years and 1 Shabuah, and we have exactly 51 Shabuah periods of time, meaning that, yes, in fact, it was a Jubilee year when Joshua entered the promised land. Boom, boom, boom. There's so much stuff here, guys. I know, like, if you haven't checked out my podcast, it's going to go over your head because it's just really deep. It just is. It's the nature of this information. It's the finer things of the Word of God, the finer stuff, right? Too many churches and too many pastors and pulpits focus on the cotton candy. And let's talk about God's love and grace. Let's talk about the New Testament, all these, Paul's sayings and Paul's letters. Let's just talk about that kind of stuff all day. I do both. I look at the law and I also look at grace. But how are you going to understand grace if you don't understand the law? How are you going to understand prophecy if you're not looking at what's being said here and what the suzerain vassal covenant was, what it means to have a torch, the torch walking in between the pieces, and then Abraham falling asleep? Like, what does that even mean? It just goes completely over people's heads, and they don't realize that there ain't no dispensational theology. That's complete trash. Dispensational theology is trash. The covenant of Abraham still applies to this very day, and it's because it still applies that we're going to see a lot of people killed, destroyed, and put to death because of their disobedience, because they do not want to follow the covenant, yes, of Abraham, but also of Moses, okay? They don't want to follow the covenant. They're breaking the covenant. What happened to the animals is going to happen to them. They're going to be killed, okay? They're going to be cut in two. They're going to be slaughtered. And that's why when we go to Daniel chapter 9, it says, now, after the first 69 weeks, and we're going into the 70th week of Daniel already began in 1996, Abraham's people, the seed of Abraham, physical and literal, spiritual and physical, literal descendants, they're going to be slaughtered. They're going to be cut off. They're going to have nothing. They're going to be destroyed. They're going to be trampled underfoot until they're cleansed, until the 2300 days, mornings and evenings take place, evenings and mornings, until the 2300 days are over. They're going to be given to destruction. This is the bad end times prophecies of the times of Jacob's trouble, and all that really bad stuff. So now we're going to read Hagar and Ishmael. I'm just wondering if any quick questions, anything crazy, anything. Let me just read this real quick. So Abraham received the covenant, which was passed down to his children and Jacob, with the scepter and the land rights between Judah and Joseph, and his two children, Ephraim and Manasseh. Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying there, but yeah, it applies to all 12 tribes of Israel. It also applies to all Christians and everybody who wants to say yes to Jesus. Yeah, I want Jesus to be Lord of my life, but they don't want to actually follow the covenant. They've confessed him. They've claimed to have the Holy Spirit. They have a heart to follow him, but they don't actually do the things that he said to do. they're in trouble. They're also gonna, yeah, the covenant also applies to them. Hopefully that makes sense, Arthur. Um, all right, so let's go to Genesis 16. Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "See now, Jehovah has restrained me from bearing children. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And then it says Abraham prayed about it. Abraham casted lots. He fasted, he prayed, and he thought about it, and he considered. And then Jehovah spoke to him and said, "Don't do it." Right? No, it doesn't say any of that. It doesn't say any of that. Abraham didn't take the time to properly pray about this decision, right? It is what it is. It is what it is. He made the decision. I'm not saying it is what it is. I don't know. It could have turned out differently, I suppose. But it said that he heeded the voice of his wife. Then Sarai, Avram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, gave her to her husband, Avram, to be his wife, after Avram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Okay? Here comes the jealousy, the contention, the strife. Then Sarai said to Abraham, "My wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. Yehovah judge between me and you." So Abraham said to Sarai, "Indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please." And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. So, yeah, we see Abram again. We see a few mistakes in his life. He lied to Pharaoh. That wasn't a good thing. You don't lie to somebody about your wife. You know what I mean? Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. You don't have to lie about whether someone's your wife or not. So that was a mistake that he made. Another mistake that he made was that he said, "Go ahead and do whatever you want to her." But it literally said just a few verses before that she became Abram's wife. You're supposed to treat your wife a little better than that, guys. You know what I mean? You're supposed to treat your wife a little bit better than that. Yeah, do whatever you want. Yeah, do it. Go ahead and abuse her. There's a lack of responsibility and compassion and care for Hagar, right? Now, the angel of Jehovah found Hagar by a spring of water in the wilderness by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from and where are you going?" She said, "I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai." And the angel of Jehovah said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand." Then the angel of Jehovah said to her, "I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude." And the angel of Jehovah said to her, "Behold, you are with child. You shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because Jehovah has heard your affliction." He will be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Then she called the name of Jehovah who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees." For she said, "Have I also here seen him who sees me?" Therefore, the well that was called Be'er Laha'ev Roi, observe it is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. So, I can relate to this story a lot because she said, "Have I also seen him who sees me?" That's how I felt in 2019. In 2019, I had this moment with God where he intervened in my life, and I was like, "Wow, he literally sees me." It's such a I can resonate. I resonate with this statement so much. And you guys probably know my story if you listen to the first episode of the podcast that I ever did. But I was about to get divorced. I was going through a really hard time with my wife, and everything in my life was kind of going crazy. And Yeshua told me I was in prayer, and he told me, you need to cast a demon out of yourself. And I did. And I was like, wow, he really did meet me where I was and taught me how to overcome the issues that I was having in my life around that time. Have I also seen him who sees me? It's a really beautiful statement. And so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Ishmael and like, oh, Ishmael is the Saudi Arabians or he's the Jordanians or whatever. I don't know. I haven't really done a deep dive on the identity of Ishmael. It says that he's going to dwell in the presence of his brethren. Most likely, yes, to this very day, he's in the Middle East. People say it's all the Arab-speaking world, but that's probably not accurate because there's other people that are Arabs besides just Ishmaelites. And so I don't know. I feel like the identity of Ishmael has kind of been obscured. I'm not 100% clear on who Ishmael is in the present day context, but there you have it. We have Genesis 16. We have Hagar being restored back with Abram, and all that takes place. Now, let's go to Genesis 17. Let's just take a look at it real quick. Okay, 17. Before we do, I don't know. I might cover. Let me just see how much time we have after Genesis 17. I'm not sure if I'm going to cover something. We skipped something in Genesis 15, and I don't know if I want to cover it, but we'll see. Genesis 17, verse 1. When Abram was 99 years old, Jehovah appeared to Abram and said to him, I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be blameless. And I will make my covenant between me and you, and will multiply you exceedingly. Then Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father to many nations. This is kind of a repetition of what we already saw in Genesis 15, where it said, at first it's kind of like, you haven't given me an heir. Eliezer of Damascus. And then it says, Elohim responds to him, and then Abraham believes in Yehovah, and Elohim accounts it to Abraham for righteousness. It's accounted to him for righteousness. So, again, what did I start today's live with? God doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, forever. He has no shadow of variation of turning. He's not human that he should ever change his mind, right? So, if you and I want to be true, legitimate children of Abraham, sons of the living God, sons of God, if we want to be like our father Abraham, I'm speaking spiritually, right? Because I don't know if I'm a descendant of Abraham. People say that I am. My wife says that I am. I don't know. Because I might be Sephardic, Jewish. I don't know. My point is, if we want to be sons of Abraham, we want to be descendants of him that also are blameless before the Most High God. What does it require? It requires believing. It requires faith. It begins with faith. He appeared to Abraham and said, get out of the land of your fathers to a land that I'm going to show you. And then it says, I'm going to make your descendants like the dust. Then it says, I'm going to make the descendants like the stars. And he believed. We believe with the heart, but guess what? He didn't just stay in the land of his fathers. He was obedient. Go, get out of the land of your fathers and go to the land I'm going to show you. Abram was obedient. So it's faith, and then you walk out that faith with obedience. It's always been that way. It's never changed. But what mainstream Christianity wants to teach us is that whole obedience part, it's all good, man. The cross did everything. You don't have to do anything anymore. You don't have to do a thing. Don't lift a finger. You don't have to walk any certain way. You can do whatever's right in your own eyes. You can do Christmas and Easter instead of Passover and the 7th month feasts. You don't have to do those. You can do Christmas and Easter. You don't have to do anything that God requires anymore because it's all faith. It's not of works, lest any man should boast. They misquote Paul. Yes, does Paul say that salvation is the gift, faith is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast? Yeah, we believe the faith, even the faith to believe is a gift from God. He puts us in a position, he brings us through circumstances, he gives us the faith to believe in him, but you have to actually be obedient. You have to actually walk. You can't just sit there and not do anything. What kind of a faith is that? I'll show you my faith by my works, but show me what faith looks like without works, and that faith is dead. Faith without works is dead. The question is, what are the works that we're supposed to be doing? If you say it's the 10 Commandments, you better be keeping the 4th because you got to keep that Sabbath day holy. But it's more than the 10 Commandments. It's a lot more than the 10 Commandments. It's all, anything that came out of the mouth of Yehovah. Again, we see this concept. Anything that came out of his mouth, that is what we're supposed to be obedient to. Okay? So that again, that's how we enter into this covenant properly, right? So that we don't end up like the animals that were cut in pieces. Okay? And it says in Genesis 17:4, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. No longer shall your name be Abram, high father, exalted father, but your name shall be Abraham, Abraham, father of many, father of a multitude of nations, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants and you after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be Elohim to you and your descendants after you. Also, I give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan, as a what? A temporary possession? A temporal. Just for a short period of time, just for a dispensation. Just for a dispensation. No. Everlasting possession. Forever and ever. I read this to you from Daniel chapter 7. The saints of the Most High God will inherit the earth, and specifically, they are going to inherit Israel. They're going to inherit Jerusalem forever. It is an everlasting possession. He's not human that he should change his mind. He says, I will be their God. And Elohim said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant, all right? Now we're going to get into, okay, let's talk about some works. Let's talk about works. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every man, every male child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall circumcise in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generations. He who is born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner who is not your descendant, he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money must be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant, right? He's going to be like those animal pieces. He's going to be like the pieces of the animal. And Elohim said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name, and I will bless her and also give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. Then God said, no, Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. Laughter. I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful. I will multiply him exceedingly. He shall beget 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this set time next year. We're going to read about that in the next chapter, next Shabbat. Then he finished talking with him, and Elohim went up from Abraham. So Abraham took, what did he do? Did he wait a few months? He took maybe a couple of years. No. Abraham took Ishmael, his son, all who were born in his house, all who were bought with money, every male among all the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskins on the very same day, as God had said to him. He circumcised grown men. You think they were like, well, are you sure about this, man? Are you positive? He was so faithful. He was so committed. His faith was not dead. It had works to back it up. It had works to back it up, guys. Do we have works to back up our faith, right? That's the application. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very same day, Abraham was circumcised, and his son Ishmael, and all the men of his house, born in the house or bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. Was Abraham justified because he was circumcised, or was he already circumcised in his heart? Did he already believe by faith, and then as a action, as obedience to the covenant, and as a display of his faith, then he became circumcised, right? It's not the circumcision that saves him. It's the faith that saves him, but faith without doing the things that are pleasing in the eyes of the Most High God, that faith is dead. This is not very difficult to understand, yet people make this so complicated that, baptism, like, I know circumcision's not really that big of a deal these days, because like medically a lot of people have it done anyways, as kids, right? Most men already have it kind of done. If you don't, well, yeah, the Torah requires you to do it, right? If you're not circumcised, literally. But most men, Western men, they're already circumcised because that's just something that's a common procedure in hospitals and so forth. But yeah, it's again, the application for today is baptism. Is it water baptism that saves somebody, or is it the faith? And then, okay, time to get water baptized because Yeshua said you got to be baptized, right? It's the same concept. People are like, no, without baptism, you can't be saved. But in fact, you believe, and baptism is just a sign. It's just you're showing with your works that you believe. That's what baptism is. Same concept, same exact concept. So, yeah, if you haven't been baptized, I encourage you guys to get baptized. Okay, become baptized in the name of Yeshua. Be baptized. Oh, there was something I was going to bring up. There's something I was going to bring up. But I'm forgetting what it is. Yeah, I think we're good. My brain is kind of fried a little bit from all this information. Establish my covenant. Yeah, I mean, everything I've said is pretty straightforward, I think. I'm wondering if we have any questions. Yeah, I love this, Keith. That's actually I wanted to talk about this. Let me pull it up. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about. So her name was Zipporah, Moses' wife. Yeah, right here. So again, Moses came after Abraham, right? This is something super interesting that you guys should check out, right? Where should we start reading? It came to pass on the way. This is so fascinating, right? Exodus 4:24. It came to pass on the way at the encampment that Jehovah met Moses and sought to kill Moses, right? That's who it's talking about. Yeah. And this is already after he's already talking to or no, he's about to go to Pharaoh, I think. He hasn't gone yet. I can't remember. But it's Moses. So Jehovah met Moses and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah, Moses' wife, took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at Moses' feet and said, "Surely you are a husband of blood to me." So the Jehovah, the Lord, let Moses go. Then she said, "You are a husband of blood because of the circumcision." So Moses literally almost died because he didn't circumcise his son. Think about what we're being shown here, right? Faith, guys, we have to actually walk out our faith. Did Moses see the burning bush in Exodus 3? Yeah, he saw the burning bush. He believed. He said, okay, on whose authority am I going to go talk to Pharaoh? I am. Okay, I'm going to use I am. I am sent me. I am sent me. But he still wasn't obedient to the covenant of circumcision. Amazing, guys. Amazing. That Moses' son was not circumcised. Amazing, guys. Amazing. So there again, what did we read about earlier? There are consequences for sin. There are consequences. Remember when Pharaoh took Sarai into his house? Pharaoh was plagued with great plagues. Guys, there's consequences for sin, whether it's intentional, for sure, if it's intentional rebellion, but if it's unintentional, there's still sin. And in this case, Jehovah sought Moses to kill him. So how do you think Elohim feels about his covenant right now in this present day when people don't want to observe the Sabbath, when people don't want to observe his feast, when people don't want to eat clean, eat the clean animals, goat, lamb, beef. They want to eat pork. They want to eat shellfish. They want to eat whatever they want, garbage, whatever's right in their own eyes, squid, calamari, octopus, whatever. People want to eat whatever they want. How do you think that makes Elohim feel? So it will be done to the man that does not uphold the covenant of Yehovah. He's going to be like the pieces of the animals. The pieces of the animals, guys. Death. You can be sure of it, okay? Now, I want to, and that's why all this really bad end times prophecy stuff is going to happen, because people don't want to follow the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the way that he said. They want to follow him the way that dispensational theology teaches, which is the imagination of men's hearts. Let's follow the God of the Bible the way that he said, not the way men say, right? So let's look at Genesis 15. Let's just take a look at it real quick, right? This is what it said. Remember what it said? In the fourth generation, the descendants of Abraham will return to the land of Canaan. Remember? And he said for 400 years. For 400 years, they're going to be afflicted, right? And in the fourth generation, the descendants of Abraham are going to return to the land of Canaan because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Let's look at this, okay? This is something that I looked up just for this teaching. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to talk about it because this is uncharted territory for me, guys. I don't. It's kind of weird. It's kind of uncharted territory. In the fourth generation, okay, the word generation, you know what that means? Period. A period of time. Sounds familiar, right? Sounds like shane. Sounds like shabua. So in the fourth period of time, dor, in the fourth period of time, this is what it means, period of time. Sorry, I didn't switch the tab. That's what it means. In the fourth dor, that's when the descendants of Abraham are going to return. Guys, I looked at my charts. You can do this too, right? You can do this too. I've tried to understand this, and it's not easy. I don't necessarily understand. I don't claim to understand what this is talking about, the fourth generation that they're going to return. But this is what I have on screen. And let me just go ahead and pull up 107. I'm going to pull up another verse real quick. If we go to Genesis 25, share this tab, Genesis 25:7, the sum of Abraham's life, the years of his life was 175 years. Okay, keep that number in mind. So when we go back here, I'll just do this real quick, guys, real quick, all right? Creation year. So here's what I've already shown in my podcast. From the creation of Adam to the birth of Isaac is 2,048 years. 2,048 years. That brings us to the 42nd Shabua cycle on my screen here. You can kind of see that right here. 2010 to 2058. Those are creation years, they're not Gregorian years. So 2048, then it says that Abraham, so he was 100 years old, 2048. We add another 75 years to his death from 2048, and you will get the year 2123, which I have right here in the upper left-hand corner. 2123. That brings us to the 44th Shabua cycle or Shane cycle of the 120 of mankind. That's what I'm showing you here. So Dor, like I just showed you, is a period of time. I don't know what that means. We're not told what the periods of time are. It just says generation, age, period of time. In order for the math to fit, because Moses at the burning bush happened in 1383 BC, which is the 51st Shane, or the 51st Shabua of the 120, that happens right here in 1383 BC. In order for the math to fit of the 4 generations, here's how it fits. This is how I've understood this. Ready? 44 and 45, 98 years is one dor. 46, 47 is the second dor. 48, 49 is the third dor. And 50, 51 is the fourth dor. Period of time. So if each period of time is 98 years, then it is actually 4 98-year periods until the 51st Shabua, when Moses goes to get the children of Israel out. And then shortly after, because you got 40 years of wandering, you got all that. Shortly after that, right here in the 51st Shabua, you have entering the promised land right here, right? 2,500 right here, 2499, 2,500 right there. As soon as this is done, they enter the promised land, just like it says, 4 dor generations. If each period of time is 98 years, that's the only way I could ever make sense of it. Now, if, again, you can watch the replay, pause this, study it, take a look at it. That's my best explanation for what's being said here in Genesis 15, that Abraham, In the fourth generation, the fourth dor, your descendants are going to return to the land of Canaan. The fourth 98-year period of time, 98, 98, 98, 98, they shall return here because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. That's all I've got with that. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that doesn't trip you up too badly. Okay, I'm gonna stop there before I hurt anybody else's brain. Okay, I'm not gonna hurt anybody else's brain. I'm getting pretty deep now. All right, guys. Well, I'm just looking through some questions here. If you guys have anything, throw it at me. 100%. Yeah, faith without works is dead. You got to have works to show your faith. 100%. Yes, indeed, guys. Yes, indeed. Thanks. I know it's a little bit longer. I had a feeling today would be a little bit longer of a teaching because it's so much material from just all these chapters. There's some things I could have gone a little deeper on, but I think this is sufficient for now. So, guys, thank you so much. I'll catch you guys next Shabbat. Keep counting the Omer. Remember, we're on the where is it? We're on the 7th day of counting the Omer, right? Counting until, so this is the first Shabbat of the 7 Shabbats of counting the Omer. And with that said, I don't know how you guys are doing it. Obviously you have my recommendation on how to do it by looking at Psalm 119. And we've already done, obviously, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Sorry, I'm scrolling fast. Hey, Vav, and now Zayin. I think we're on Zayin right now. So just make sure you're keeping up with that. Psalm 119, reaffirming your covenant to Elohim so that you don't end up like the pieces, right? And it's not that we're not doing the Torah and doing the feasts and all this stuff out of fear. We're doing it because we love God, but we know the consequences of sin. It's ending up like those pieces of animals during that deep sleep, when Abraham had the deep sleep come upon him. And the fiery torch passed between the pieces. I don't want that to happen to me, guys. I don't want it to happen to you either. So blessings to you. Arthur, I see your comment. I'll send you the email as soon as we're done here. Shalom, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me for so long. Blessings to you. And hopefully I answered that question, Keith. Yeah, Moses was judged for disobedience for sure. Okay. All right, guys. Amen. Take care. And I will catch you next time. Appreciate you.